So pardon me, my voice is a little rough, so I might have to walk closer to talk louder. I used to be a phys ed teacher, so I used to pride myself on how loud my voice can get. Not working tonight, but before I get started, I just want to thank Dr. Butterfield and Ms. Shergill and the whole Connect staff for welcoming me. This is truly a great school that I'm proud to be a part of. And as you can hear from my colleagues here, pretty impressive amount of knowledge they have. They're incredibly wise. And also, I just see the stuff they do with the kids, all the way to our, I guess, student teachers or pre-service teachers. And you'll see Mr. Wilding talk, and it's incredible and how they're integrated into the environment. And I think this is a really important aspect for building resilience in children. So before I get started here, give you a little bit of my background and why I became interested in this topic. I used to work as a exercise physiologist with elite athletes, and I noticed over time that some of them had an incredible amount of talent and ability, and they didn't do well. And I couldn't understand that. And then my first stop in the educational world was in gifted education. And I work with a lot of bright kids, a lot of bright staff, and some of these bright kids didn't do well. So in line what Mr. McKenzie said about EF, executive functioning, being a better predictor than IQ, I believe that. And at first I didn't. At first I thought you gotta do your best and be the best and work hard, and the outcome will be achieved, but not necessarily. There's something else that was missing, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. So I started to study it. And I probably started studying it about 8 years ago. And over time, I was redirected by different people I met, different educators, different psychologists, different physiologists, sociologists, even philosophers helped shape my thinking about how we approach this in schools. So first off, I'll just go through a brief outline, and one thing that I'd like to try with you guys is a little reflective exercise, as well as going to define resilience, what it means, its key components. Why is resilience important now? It's a relatively new term, started in the 70s. It used to be how you describe a property of a metal in the physical sciences. And now it's moved into the social sciences where that term means something different. Ordinary magic, very important term. Keep that in mind. I also want to provide some simple frameworks, because whenever you come to a parent session, it's nice to take away something that maybe is not so theoretical. It's a bit practical. You can take and not like a checklist, but something to keep you on track in terms of how you are viewing your own children. The grit factor, that's an academic term now. Growth mindset, developmental assets, and I'll have a parting thought on all of this as we kind of wrap up the evening and go to Mr. Wilding in terms of what's actually happening in the classroom. Is my voice okay? Can we hear? Okay. Pardon me? Yeah, I do not smoke. Reflective exercise number 1. So I want you to think back to a time where you demonstrated resilience, however you define it. And if you need to close your eyes, stare at your knees, stare up at the ceiling, please do so. And I want you to see if you can answer that question. And why did you successfully adapt? Just think. And if you're comfortable to share, even just a point, this is where it sort of be nice to have a little bit of interaction, and you don't have to tell your whole life story, and sometimes it's quite personal too. We've all been through difficult times. As just maybe a point that you think is important, that you would think, yeah, this is a key factor I think people should know about.
I know we're not supposed to ask questions, but why is the word adapt So we demonstrated resiliency, and why did you successfully adapt? Why is the word adapt?
Good question. Yeah. Can I answer that after?
Yep.
Is that okay? Yeah. Very good. Anybody? Okay, you don't have to share. That's fine. This is not going to be on the spot type of answer, or we wait and stare at each other.
I'll give one example.
Sure.
When I was in my early 30s, I was diagnosed with a neurological disease, which actually killed my father when he was in his early 70s. And so you ask how you successfully adapt to something like that, and you move forward and you find ways to overcome it and adapt your body to it. So you just have to, I mean, people who develop these kinds of diseases and things have to adapt. So you just find the strength to move forward and keep going.
Okay, so finding the strength, like the internal strength, emotional strength to move forward.
And you educate yourself.
And educate, okay, and find more about, learn more about the disorder, the disease. Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else would like to share?
I would say like reaching out for the resources that are available to you and using like interdependence with others who have, like who can support you.
Great. Yeah, so basically reaching out to people and finding resources that you have an interdependency upon. Great. Any others?
Having to let go of control.
Okay, so preparing yourself that if you have a tendency to want to control the situation.
Just being in a situation
Yeah.
where you get sick parents, sick sister, you know.
Yeah. And yeah, okay. As a part of emotional regulation, perhaps. Yeah. All right, well, thank you. So there are various definitions of resilience. I'm going to provide you 4. It's a bit of a busy slide, and I'll answer your great question because resilience is defined by, these research groups are very powerful research groups that have really, studied resilience from the beginning of its days. Ann Maston from the University of Minnesota looks at it as a capacity of a dynamic system to adapt successfully to disturbances that threaten system function, viability, or development. So a bit of a physiological look at it. Now we have Olson's group that looks at it as a dynamic process, again, of adaptation to a risk setting that involves interaction between a range of risk and protective factors, from the individual to the social, right? Kind of touching upon your point a little bit about resources. Johnson and Howard say it's an inherent and nurtured capacity of individuals to deal with life stressors in ways that enable them to lead healthy and fulfilling lives. And lastly, Maston, Best, and Garmenzi. Garmenzi was one of the godfathers of the resilience research. He describes it as a process of a capacity for or outcome of successful adaptation despite any challenging or threatening circumstance. So we see successful adaptation or positive adaptation. Those are key words. And you need a situation of adversity or threatening circumstance. And that's a key part I'm gonna touch upon a little bit more. So why resilience? Why do we look at that? And Goldstein and Brooks recently produced one of pretty much a Bible of all the resilience research and did an impressive summary and meta-analysis. And what they determined is that really we're not immune. We will have challenges in our lives, and often lives are filled with episodes of stress. It will happen. Our number will be called one day, and we will be forced in a situation where either we adapt or we don't. Or do we negatively adapt? Ideally, we want to positively adapt to that situation. Here are some of the statistics that mostly I'm going to talk about the good news, but this is not necessarily the good news. Is that we have a mental health concern, and this is from a Canadian Mental Health Association. And so mental illness affects us directly and indirectly. And in any given year, 1 in 5 people in Canada will personally experience a mental health problem or illness. And by age 40, about 50% of the population will have had a mental health illness. So resilience is important. Total number of 12 to 19-year-olds in Canada at risk for developing depression is 3.2 million people. That's a lot of people. The 2016 participation report card that Public Health Agency of Canada provides indicates only 9% of Canadian kids aged 5 to 17 years of age get 60 minutes of physical activity needed to be healthy. So whether we have a health concern, we talk about health issues, that is inevitably staring our children down as they age. And only 24% of 5 to 17-year-olds meet the Canadian Sedentary Behavior Guidelines recommended for no more than 2 hours of recreational screen time a day. And in recent decades, children's nightly sleep duration has decreased between 30 and 60 minutes. It's less. In addition, is that every hour kids spend in sedentary activity, it delays their bedtime by 3 minutes. And got a little bit errors here, but basically there is a sleep issue with our children. They're on more than they're off. They're thinking, and anxiety is a reality we have to deal with. So, what do we do about it? Here's the good news, is that our kids might be facing pressures that maybe we didn't face. And because we didn't face them, we don't know how to approach them. We don't know what to do. But again, if we go to Ann Maston's work, and she's a brilliant lady, and she produced this research, and she titles a lot of her talks, Ordinary Magic. And it's her opinion, and a lot of opinions in the research world, that resilience does arise from just ordinary, simple processes. It's nothing special. One of the things she says is the biggest surprise that emerged from the study of children that she did, which was a massive study, a very high-end study, is that children who overcome adversity to become successful youth and adults in society, it was the ordinariness of the phenomenon. It was non-remarkable stuff. So what do we need by non-remarkable? So basically, the opposite of what we get from pop culture, right? The hero, the person that has the special powers, the inherent special ability and talents, those are the only ones that can survive. Not true. So, evidence strongly suggests, on the contrary, that resilience is a common and typically arises from the operation of basic processes, which include the following. So, Maston, she's a sociologist, but when she writes, it's almost like a physiologist. She looks at things as adaptive systems. And just as Abby and Jared shared with us, we can learn, we can change. Our neural ability, our rewiring can happen. So if we have these things, like a healthy human brain in good working order, close relationships with competent, caring adults, how many times have you heard that tonight? Committed families, effective schools and communities, opportunities, developmentally appropriate opportunities for children to succeed, and their belief that's nurtured by positive interactions. Those are ordinary things. It could be very simple things. It doesn't have to be being in an elite club, whether it's sport or music or whatever it may be. They just need to feel that someone believes in them, and there's caring people, and they see some small successes. They don't have to be the best. Now, I'm going to bring up here this is a theory a lot of resilience researchers use as their framework. And at the risk of sounding, academic and theories, it's actually a very simple theory. And Bronfenbrenner, it's his because he basically said that the child is one aspect of it. The internal capabilities of a child does have an impact on the resilience. However, other things do too. And let's look at them in a holistic perspective, right from the macro system, which are the attitudes and ideologies of our culture. Do we care about our children? Right? In what ways do we? What about our extended family and neighbors, our school boards, our government agencies, our social services, daycare, all the way as it gets closer and closer to the child. This is a good way, a good map for parents to say, okay, where does my child fit in? What does their blue system look like? What does their yellow system look like? How many people are there? And that's an important thing to consider when you're looking at the resilience profile of your child. As they age, we hope we're populating that circle as much as possible. So when we do our reflective exercise again, you guys actually show that, I think your comment, I'm sorry, I don't know your name. Brenda, okay, thanks Brenda, because you had a very important point about resources. So when we think back to a time when we successfully adapted, sometimes we think about what did I do, how did I get through it? And that's an important part. But another important part is a resource. And as a parent, it's to acknowledge you're not the only resource. You can't be. You need other resources in your child's life. But it's you're the quarterback. You can help set those conditions and help identify who those people are. And that's a really, really important point. The term that I actually got from some of the trauma literature on childhood trauma, and Bruce Perry has done a lot of good work on this, and he uses the term relational poverty. And we know that is linked to a lot of negative health outcomes.